Hello and welcome to the Arcade Heroes podcast edition something or other, or one of those numbers along there. I should have looked that up, but that's okay. We don't need to worry too much about numbers here. Just welcome back. It's been a little while since our last podcast. I'm Adam Pratt with ArcadeHeroes.com, and joining me is Sean McDermott from All Castle Games. Hello, Sean.
Hello.
And a special guest that we're very excited to have with us today is Ben Heckendorn. How are you doing, Ben?
Hello, guys. I am okay today.
Okay.
Just okay, huh?
Yep, pretty average.
Well, hopefully we can hope it to be a better day or something along those lines.
I know this podcast isn't that bad. Come on. I mean,
Yeah.
It's a little laid back, but So,
Incredibly.
so Ben, welcome to the show, and we wanted to talk to you a little bit about the arcade and your thoughts. And do you hate the arcade or do you love the arcade? That kind of thing.
Okay.
I mean,
Spill the beans.
spill the beans.
I certainly have opinions about arcades.
So, like, what was the first arcade you remember? Like, what like as a kid, did you go there, or did you care?
Growing up, we didn't have arcades, but they used to have video games, on location everywhere.
You didn't
back in the day.
Oh, okay.
No, I grew up in a small town. The closest arcade was probably Aladdin's Castle in Madison on the west side.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that was there up until about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, maybe.
Probably 10. I was there when it closed. So. West Town Mall.
Yes, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool to go to that. Probably the most times I would play would be like they always had the arcade games in the front of Walmart, and so like when you get dragged along with your parents to go to Walmart so they can buy their crap, they just leave you there, which is pretty cool. But yeah, there didn't used to be. There weren't any arcades where I grew up, but if we went to the bowling alley, they had 10 games. Walmart usually had about 4 or 5. They'd have them at the gas stations would have them. They'd have them in front of the Ben Franklin, and it's just amazing how many games there used to be around back then, and now there's hardly anything. Does Walmart even have games in the front of it? It's all redemption now, isn't it? I try not to go to Walmart unless I absolutely have to.
Yeah, they have gameplay, which is all redemption. There's one driver in there usually, I think.
It depends. Like the couple of Walmarts in my area, some of them are just filled with claw machines and a couple of video games. There was one that I saw that had a Batman game, but for some reason they didn't put the big Batman symbol on it.
That's because they would probably rip it off at Walmart. I mean, geez.
Possibly, but even then, if you worked on that game, that wouldn't be terribly easy to do. But yeah.
I got one. I could rip that off. They'd have a little kid up there hanging on it before you know it. Come on. I mean, they would, yeah. No, Walmart.
Out of all the games I've had kids climb on, I've actually never had them climb on Batman. But
wasn't that over in Sheboygan where that kid crawled in the claw machine? Was that? I don't know. Anyway.
Happy time.
So Ben, you're working on some pinball games now, I guess, right? I mean, is that what you're doing? Or you have your show? I mean, for the people that don't know, what your show is all about, did you want to describe that, or maybe if they haven't heard you?
Describe my web show or talk about pinball. Which one would you like me to start?
I don't.
Start with the show.
Start with your show. What you're best known for, modding things, right? How'd you get into something like that?
Well, I'd been modding things for years, and then around 2010. I was contacted by an ad agency who was working with Element 14, and they're like, hey, they want to have web content. You want to do a show, like a bi-weekly, I think it was at the time, web show. I'm like, sure. So we started doing that back in 2010, and it slowly has grown more and more complicated to what it is today. Now we have 4 people, including myself, working on it during the week. And that's just in Madison. There's more people behind the scenes even beyond that. So we, every week we do a new project, or sometimes we might do a project that goes over the course of, 2 or 3 episodes. Lately, what did we do last week? Last week, oh God, I forgot already. We were doing a DevKit lunchbox. This week we're making what we're calling luggage detective. It's this thing you put in your checked bag, and it logs all the motion events so you can see how it was handled in the
Oh,
plane.
Mm-hmm.
that's
That
pretty
was
cool.
something that might be kind of fun. Yeah, another one we came up with was actually I think the community came up with it was Magic Smoke Detector. Although we might change that one, it was like a relay control that you put on something. So if whatever the thing is, if the magic smoke comes out of the circuit board, if it gets cooked, it's like, oh, basically a smoke detector hooked up to a relay that like kills power if something gets cooked. But then a friend of mine suggested, he's like, hey, maybe it should just be like a certain temperature turns it off. That way it doesn't get cooked first. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's good too. So that's we do that basically every day during the week. That's like a full-time job, and then I do pinball on the side
So,
for some reason.
so you went from like modding like game systems and stuff to building your own like projects, and then how did you transition into pinball and the world of the arcade?
Um, well, a long time ago, I really liked the Neo Geo arcade system.
Hmm.
It was really impressive
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. It was one of the first systems that was stereo, or all of them were stereo. Very cool stuff. And of course, when I was like 14 or whenever I was 14 when that came out. Obviously, I would have never had a chance in hell of having one. So one of the first things when I got older, I'm like, oh, I should try to buy the circuit boards, like the motherboard off the internet. And as you know, it's actually pretty affordable to collect for the cartridges. So
Hmm.
I built my own Neo Geo cabinet. That was, I don't know, about 10 or 11 years ago. And I remember the reason I did it when I did was because Hurricane Katrina had just hit. And I'm like, well, plywood prices are probably going to go up pretty soon. I better build this now. So, and after I'd done that, I'm like, well, now what am I gonna do next? This is something I just did for myself. It wasn't for a customer or anything. And then I'm like, oh, I should build a pinball machine next. Like, what's the next complicated thing? And that was it. And that's when I started coming up ideas for the Bill Paxton pinball machines. I
Oh, yeah.
started working on that like
No, no,
2006.
were you an avid pinball player before that, or you just said, hey, we'll just build a pinball? Like,
I mean, I liked pinball machines, but I wasn't really that much of a player, nor was I any good at it, and I really haven't gotten much better at playing them. Maybe just very slightly.
I heard you were doing pretty good. I don't, no,
If we do a tournament, if I end up in the middle, I'm happy. It's
okay.
about the best I can hope for.
So,
Although I ended up in Division A of the last year's Mad Rollin', and of course I immediately got creamed in the second round. So.
And how would you compare working on a pinball machine to your other projects?
Um, well, it's astronomically more difficult. I would say one thing
Right.
I like about it is when we do things on our show, for doing a build a week or even a build like in 3 weeks, we've only
Mm-hmm.
got that much time to work on something, and whatever we can get done in that time, that's as far as the project ever gets. Sometimes we come back and revisit things, but not that often.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something like a pinball machine. You can work on it, bit by bit over the course of, a year or years. And that kind of sucks as well because it's like, oh my God, this is taking forever. But it also allows you to work on it to the point of like a natural completion. Like you have the time
Right.
to develop it as fully as you might want to. And I'm
Yeah.
still working on America's Most Haunted. I've got another code update coming this spring or like probably May.
jeez,
Yeah.
that's how many have you done? I mean, what version are you up to on that game?
It shipped with version 13 of the code, and this will be 23. So there'll be
Holy.
10 code releases 10 code releases in about 2 years.
So those people are getting a pretty
Wow.
good deal. I mean, considering what they pay for the machine, and they're getting constant updates. I mean,
Honestly, a big part of me doing it is I just want to see if I can push this used value higher. I mean, I don't gain anything from that, but it might be fun. I actually emailed one of the voice actors today and asked him if he would do additional dialogue or how much it would cost. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I know no one would actually want there to be more dialogue in it, well, except for me, because I'd like to add like a sub wizard mode. I think would be cool because it doesn't have one. Basically, if you complete all the goals, you open up wizard mode, and there's like nothing in between. So I think I might want to have a few other things in there. That would give the modes themselves are pretty deep, but the way the modes relate to each other isn't very deep. So I'd like to add more depth in that aspect.
has anyone actually completed it with the glass on? Do you know?
Yeah, one or two people have beaten it, and I heard of this one guy who played through it, beat the wizard mode, and then played through it again and beat the wizard mode a second time.
Holy jeez.
Wow.
But yeah, I would say 2 or 3 people maybe. It's pretty tough, but that's what people say they want. They want long, deep rule sets so the game has longevity in a home collection.
Okay. So you guys are working on Rob Zombie's Spook Show International right now. Now, how much input are you? I mean, how much hands-on with that game are you? Like, you're not the designer, right? You're just doing.
No, that was Chuck's design.
And you're just doing. What are you doing on that right now? I mean, you doing anything, or I mean, what?
Okay, so what I did with Rob Zombie. So I'm thinking back. Well, originally I came up with like some rules with Chuck.
Okay.
And originally I had this pitch idea, and that you were going to be a new roadie in the band. And it turns out you learn that everything is real, like all these creatures are real. So it's kind of like, oh, if you want to be my tour manager, you got to beat the Super Beast and stuff like that. So I came up with the rules. That was the rule set we originally came up with. But then Rob wanted it to be like straight horror, so no meta side to it. So unfortunately, that didn't happen in the game. But I still have been working with it alongside everyone else. I mean, a lot more people are working on it, whereas AMH was like basically just me and Chuck.
Right.
This game, we have a dots guy, a separate programmer, a separate artist. Like a lot more people are working on it. So as far as what I've done, I took all the code from America's Most Haunted and like rewrote it into a proper library, like a PinHeck library that operates with the board set. So I did that about a year ago, or not quite a year ago. So the new programmer guy, David Fawcett, would have a better base to create a game off of. Then I also rewrote the audio video system. I mean, it's based off America's Most Haunted, but a lot has changed, and it went to color, obviously.
Right.
I also figured out how to get the color display working with an FPGA on LCD, and then I've been doing a lot of like coding support. So if it's like, oh, we need an EEPROM to work, I'm like, okay, I'll write the drivers for that and whatnot. So I haven't really done rules, but I've done most of the underlying programming that makes it run, like the operating system, if you will.
Now, I got a question because I remember there was one point with John Popaduke that there was the Ben Heck's Zombie Adventureland. Popaduke, sorry. Are there any elements from that never released machine that you've incorporated into either of those games?
Well, the first thing to keep in mind with that game is that it was 100% John's idea. Mm-hmm. He was like, "Hey Ben, I want to make everyone asking for a zombie game, so I want to make a zombie game, and you can be the bad guy in it." And I'm like, "Okay."
Is that how he talks too?
Pretty much, yeah. That's how John talks. Like, "Oh yeah, the zombies are cool, man. Yeah, we're gonna have this zombie chick with big boobs, and it's an amusement park. It's really fun." And at the time I was like, "Oh, that's rather flattering." But the thing with John is he was always trying to teach you things. It was like he didn't really want to hire people to work with him. He wanted to hire people he could teach. Mm-hmm. And I think that was among one of many problems that he had. So instead of being like, "Hey, look, Ben has made entire games by himself. Maybe I should have him help." It was like, "Oh, here, Ben, you're on the game as a character, and maybe you can come up with ideas, but we won't use any of them." And so, I basically didn't feel like I had anything to do with the game, which is why I was like, well, I didn't really quit the game, but John didn't like the fact that I was also helping Chuck, because you remember Chuck had that Pinball Zombies from Beyond the Grave thing at one time, mm-hmm. which he turned into Rob Zombie. And then, of course, this was long before Walking Dead came out. And John's like, "Oh, Ben, if you're gonna work with Chuck on that game, I don't know, you got to make a choice, Ben." I'm like, okay, I chose wisely.
Yeah, you did.
So design-wise, I had basically nothing to do with those games. I'm not saying that to distance myself from John. It's just the truth. Had I had more, vested interest in the games from a creative standpoint, I might have gotten more involved, which could have been a bad thing. I guess it would have been a bad thing.
Yeah, probably.
Right, in
But
retrospect, but
Well, I do.
yeah.
but also, I think John should have, I'd say the best rule in business is hire people that are either better than you or can do what you cannot do. And John
Mhm.
hired people and paid them to do things, but still thought he would just do everything, which I guess is the role of a creative director. But the thing is, he didn't really have any of the other backgrounds. Like he didn't have like an engineering department or an art department or any of those things. So I'm
Mhm.
sure he could direct a game, but he couldn't direct all the aspects of what it took to actually build a game. Which is why
Right, the
his
business
games
side.
were really nice looking machines that never got built and may not have functioned.
Right. More art pieces than anything else.
Right. An art director could not make an entire movie or an entire stage play.
Hmm.
Or if they did, it would just be a hollow shell.
Right.
Which is
Just in an
exactly
art
what
house
John
somewhere.
made, basically.
ShamWow.
But I did learn a lot from John. He taught me a lot of things about where to put ramps, why people shoot where they do, foam core.
Mhm.
So I learned a lot of stuff from him. But it's just unfortunate that he didn't practice what he preached.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was always curious about that because I remember covering it on the blog back when I first heard about it, but after that, it just kind of seemed to disappear into the ether and never really heard much about it again until he's doing Magic Girl, and then that all blew up. So.
How
Well,
much?
Magic Girl was before the zombie adventure game.
Yeah, it just wasn't very
Wow.
well known, for me at least. How much of like John's influence do you think went into America's Most Haunted? Like, how much of
Um,
his teachings? 'Cause-
the ramp on the right hand side, I put that where it is because John's like put it right here, and I'm like, okay. He's like, that's the easiest place to make it hit. So yeah, I mean, there's some stuff from John, but that's probably a big part of it. Because I think I was working on that game before John was like, I don't want to be involved with Ben anymore.
Yeah, I think you were, because I mean, I played your earlier games like Lost and well, I saw Lost, I didn't play it, but I played the Bill Paxton, and that definitely that ghost interloop shot reminds me a little bit of something.
Circus Voltaire.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and which is
Oh,
good.
actually, that reminds me. Yeah, that was one thing I learned from John. He's like, most people are right-handed, so they want to push the right flipper button, which makes the ball goes to the upper left. He's like, that's why most games have the big toy, to the slight left of center on the play field. And he's like, so whatever you put there, make it do as much as possible. And that's why I have like, there's a 3-bank target and a loop and a magnet, so that you just get as much as possible out of that spot that people really like to shoot.
So he didn't listen to his own advice on Circus Voltaire then, apparently.
Well, who
Or he
knows?
had a left-handed playtester.
Well,
That's true. Well, maybe that's one of the reasons why. Well, one of the many reasons why it wasn't successful back in the day.
well, as green and then the balls would fall into the bottom of the box
Yeah.
on test, but that's another thing.
Yeah, there's I don't know if, well, I'm sure, obviously you know about the curse of green machines.
Mm-hmm.
I think with Circus Voltaire, yeah, it was like people may not have realized why they didn't like the game, but that might have been why they didn't like it. It was because people had dominant right hands, wouldn't have anything cool to shoot for.
Well, unfortunately, back then it was all operators that making the call. I mean, and if it performed poorly on test, they didn't buy it. And if they heard from their other operator friends it didn't perform well, they didn't buy it. That kind of thing. So
Yeah, because that game was pretty much like a colossal flop, right?
yeah, and I mean that's kind of the reason. Like a lot of those really good '90s games never really did well, is because some operators weren't buying, or they just didn't like. They heard their friends didn't like them, and that's it.
Do you think? I noticed you were on Kanita's podcast,
Canada.
or whatever that guy's name is, and
Yeah.
you talked about how licensed games are important and why Photoshop almost is important because it shows the license rather than an interpretation of the license.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, like after about '94, Williams basically stopped making licensed games. All those games that we love now were unlicensed, and I wonder if that was part of the reasons that.
Well, you know what it is, because like the license makes the game age, and when an operator has an old aged game, the locations they'll pitch a fit. For at least for me. I mean, Adam has a
Right.
different situation where he can choose more of what he wants to do. But for me, the location can pitch a fit and say, "Hey, that's a really old game. That's like Space Jam." I'm like, "What? How old is that?" So now we have to go and buy a new pinball machine because the damn license is old.
Yeah, but there's a whole generation of like 29-year-old kids who think Space Jam's a good movie because they saw it when they were 10. So maybe it'll come around again.
Yeah, but I mean, but that's
It's
why.
actually pretty bad. Like only 2.5 minutes of that movie occur in space.
But
Fun
you
fact.
get my point. I can get
I
can
know.
get like a
Age is
Medieval Madness, and that game, no one knows what the hell that is. I could say, hey, this is a brand new pinball machine, and wheel it in there. They wouldn't know the difference unless they knew pinball, which most people don't.
So you're saying that's the negative with a photo collage. Like so in 20 years, Game of Thrones will be an old. Who cares about that
Well,
game?
yeah, imagine if it was
Got
Breaking,
Summerly out now.
like if they made the Breaking Bad pinball instead, and that's already getting a little old. I mean, it's not super old, but I mean, it's not on TV anymore. It's in rerun, right? So.
You think Stern was gonna make a Breaking Bad?
Well, I mean, I'm just going by a
Well,
TV show.
they could, because I mean Stern. I mean, we all know about the Ghostbusters pinball, and they're using the old, the old Ghostbusters to appeal to that nostalgia as opposed to the new female cast. So, and of course Stern's
they're
kept
not
churning out the music band. I mean, and all of those bands are considered dinosaurs as far as music goes at this point.
Oh, did Kiss do well? I mean, you'd think any other genre, no one would give a crap about Kiss, but it seems like in pinball it could work.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not sure. As far as I'm aware, the best-selling one, it was either AC/DC or Metallica, because I know Metallica, when they first announced that, they sold out of the limited editions pretty much within an hour, which I heard has happened with Ghostbusters. But AC/DC, I know it's done incredibly well down in Australia, of course. Not sure.
Common wisdom is AC/DC is like their top title ever.
I heard Australia's paved with them, right? Was that you that said that?
Right. Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, that makes sense because that's where they're from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as an operator, I mean, the band licenses are easier because they're kind of timeless. But as for something like Ghostbusters, it's a great looking game, and the movie's coming out now, and it's green. It's green. It's true. But
one of them is green.
But the pros are blue.
True. Well, I mean,
Ghostbusters is gonna like just sell hand over fist, no doubt. Doesn't matter if the license is old.
No, but there's a new movie which makes it relevant. So, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, because like in the arcade industry overall right now, because the video side is also taking on this whole license obsession, because you have Jurassic Park arcade, you have Star Wars Battlepod, Transformers, Batman, and Aliens, and all that stuff. And it's because right now, for when it's going to be selling, that's where it's very easy, where they don't really have to do any marketing. They simply just slap the license name on there, and that'll sell itself to whatever their market is. And of course, with pinball, it's a little bit different. But I think Gary Stern's talked a little bit about that before, hasn't he? Where he's discussed how the license makes it a lot easier to sell, since you have that built-in fan base ready to go, and you don't have to create a new fan base from scratch, so to speak, to try and sell people on it.
Yeah, and it's not just the way to sell it, but if a person walks up to a Lord of the Rings machine, they're like, "Oh, Lord of the Rings, I know these characters. I know that you have to destroy the ring."
Yep.
They understand things about the game without having to be told.
Right.
And
it
even
makes
something
it intuitive.
even something like Medieval Madness, it's basically an unlicensed Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So you don't really have to explain things to them. But then if you look at our America's Most Haunted game, that's why there's so much goddamn dialogue in it, is because you have to explain to the player what's going on. It's like, so, people will play Ghostbusters and they'll be like, "That's a big Twinkie." And they'll hear the game say that and they'll laugh. But that's not a joke. It's a reference. It's something from the movie. Mm-hmm. So when you're creating something original, you actually have to, create your own jokes as well, because a joke only works when you have the context around it.
Yep.
Although they do have custom Ernie Hudson speech, which is pretty cool. Although I just hope the dialogue that got written is better than for that like Spider-Man remake.
Did you see the video that was on Facebook recently?
For Ghostbusters?
Yeah, where Dwight was playing it.
No. Is there good speech?
Yeah, it sounded really good. It has
that Spider-Man
from the movie too.
And that Spider-Man, it's like, I'll never look at sandcastles the same way again. It's like, oh God.
You can definitely tell that stuff that wasn't from the movie, from when but it was a
Well,
little corny.
they had to change everything.
No, they have movie call-outs in it. I heard some.
No, in Spider-Man.
No, oh no, I'm talking about Ghostbusters. I'm sorry.
My point is, yeah, if you look at like 2007 Spider-Man, someone actually wrote new dialogue for J.K. Simmons to say, and that's actually pretty funny. 8 arms. Why does he need to play this game? But then they make the Spider-Man remake thing, and the writing is just garbage.
Oh, really?
So I'm just saying, even if they have custom speech for like Ernie Hudson in the Ghostbusters game, I hope it's well written.
Well, did you hear the speech that they had Carl Urban do for the Star Trek code update?
I don't think I ever did. I've heard that it's kind of underwhelming.
It's very few and far between.
I sit next to one all day long, so I get to hear a lot nonstop. But I liked it. I mean, it was definitely better than what they had initially, and they had some jokes that, of course, were all insider Trekkie jokes and things of that nature. But at least in that one, to me, I thought it was pretty good. But I definitely understand what you're saying on the Ghostbusters.
I mean,
fingers crossed.
I think it's great that that's what Stern used to do. They get a license and they hire a real actor from the movie to add additional dialogue to flesh it out. And I mean, with the way their games are making money hand over fist, I mean, they might as well.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if they look at Avengers, like Avengers had a lot of problems, but the fact that it was like you had none of the custom speech, not even calls from the movie, but like they just re-recorded it with like shitty beasts and whatnot, and that's not what people want to hear. It just it's like everyone knows what Robert Downey Jr. talks like, or what any of the Avengers talk like, and when you're like, I'm Iron Man, it's like they don't want to hear that, especially when you have Iron Man sitting right there, which is a better game, and it's got real quotes from the movie.
It also had a green LE.
Oh no! Yes.
The Hulk version.
Hey, what about Flipper Football from Capcom? Remember that thing?
That was green too, wasn't it?
Oh, all green.
Was it soccer too, right? If I remember right, was it?
It was called
World
football,
Cup.
but it was football in the context of European football.
Yeah, we call that soccer. I don't know what okay.
Right. So yeah, but they called it a football game because it was soccer in America. Fail, fail, fail.
And leave on it too. So Anyway, so what are you planning to do for the future for pinball? Are you going to do anything else, or you've had it with pinball? You got enough gray hair from it? I mean, what's the story?
Yeah, I do have some gray now in my beard, so I never grow it now.
Me too.
It's too bad because I used to have nice dark red hair, which is almost like brown. As far from red as possible is good. I don't know. I mean, Chuck is looking at like some licenses possibly. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty good bet that there won't be any more unlicensed games from Spooky Pinball because they're hard. They're hard to do. We really, really struggle with America's Most Haunted, and it's too bad it didn't sell faster at the beginning, because then we probably could have sold more, or had a higher limit and then made more money. But it is what it is. In fact, I would say that we had talked about doing a follow-up to America's Most Haunted, not another run, but a completely new game.
Right.
And the premise, the name of it is America's Most Weird. If we did it, I mean, it's only been discussed, and the premise is instead of looking for ghosts, they'd be looking for urban legends. So you'd be going around the country, and you'd have like different locations. You'd have like a chupacabra in Texas, a skunk ape in Louisiana, an alien in Nevada, a Bigfoot like in Michigan,
a Montauk monster in New England, right?
Yeah, or of course there'd be a Jersey Devil in it. And, yes, that was kind of the premise. And each creature would be, they wouldn't be scary; they'd be goofy. They'd have they'd all have something they want to do. Like Mothman would want to be a crime fighter. Chupacabra would be a Latin lover. Bigfoot would want to try to find a girlfriend. The alien would want to probe you. There'd be each creature would have a motive. I don't know how I turned it into a game at the moment, but that was a follow-up idea we had as far as an unlicensed title.
There'd be a Possumus woman too.
That's not well known, so no.
Oh darn.
Only if you want to. That would be for the ultra obscure wizard mode.
Yeah. I would just pick the six most well-known urban legend creatures in America, and then use those as the 6 modes. It'd be fun too, because then you could go to different locations. So you could have like Texans saying things, and New Englanders, and Jersey people, and kind of like in Attack from Mars has all the stereotypes of how people talk. Same kind of thing, just America.
That definitely sounds like
That's a good idea.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Actually, to throw this out really,
sell more than 150.
Yeah.
Right. And that's actually not bad considered with some independent video games. I've heard of numbers where they only reach like 40. So I guess 150 is not the worst, but
yeah, and especially a pinball machine obviously costs a lot more, so there's more.
Yeah, definitely.
At that. But it's kind of the point where Chuck's looking at licenses, but it's like if he gets licenses, that there will be more demand, and then he has to be able to meet that demand. So, I mean, there's a lot more than 300 people that wanted a Rob Zombie game.
Yeah.
For instance.
Is she the one that was looking into a Mystery Science Theater 3000 license? Because I heard somebody in Wisconsin is. I just haven't been able to figure out who it was exactly.
Where did you hear that from, and when?
From Trace Below. For listeners that don't know that name, he's the guy that played Dr. Forrester and Crow in Mystery Science Theater, the TV show. So I met him at Salt Lake Comic Con last year, and I talked about pinball because I had my pinball game there at the con, and he started telling me that somebody approached him to do the voice acting work for a Mystery Science Theater pinball, but he didn't want to get paid for it in cash. He just wanted a pinball machine, and the person turned him down because they didn't want to give him a pinball machine away. And so he was disappointed in that because he just wanted a pinball machine for himself because he liked pinball. And I know he's in Wisconsin, Minnesota area, so yeah.
Oh gosh, I wonder if what the hell? Yes, we looked into it. I think what happened with that was we were talking to people, and the problem was that I think everybody wanted a game.
Oh, really?
And it would have been getting to the point where we would have been having to give out, like, I don't know how many. I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving people a game, but I think for the scale of the license and the scale we were at this time, and this is even before America's Most Haunted took off. I mean, we were talking like 2014. So, we didn't have as much, wiggle room for stuff. It was something. I think if you had like 3 or 4 of the main people plus the company, you're talking about like it was 5 or 6 games we were going to have to build, plus the licensing costs. And at that time, it was a little too rich for our blood.
Right.
But and then now it's being remade, right? Like Joel Hodgson has like a Kickstarter for that, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, who knows? Like if we wouldn't have had that game done in time, and if we would have still been working on it when Joel created his new season, would that caused a licensing conflict? Because our idea was have it based off, we try to get the original cast, and that's I think also Kevin Murphy he'd been approached. I don't know if he had agreed. But I was like, Chuck, we can only do this if we have the actual voices.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's too bad. That's too bad that
that's too bad.
Praise was disappointed about it, but it just at that time it didn't really work for us. But who knows, now that Mystery Science Theater is coming back, maybe the time is right. I mean, I was also a little one of the concerns. I think sometimes you have to divorce yourself from the things that you love, because I'm a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater. So is Chuck. But if you were to draw a Venn diagram, like this circle is pinball people and this circle is Mystery Science Theater fans, is there enough overlap, sell enough games to basically meet your goal? And something like America's Most Haunted, I mean, we said that at 150 because like 100 is like the break even. Like there's basically no reason. If you can't build 100 of something, you shouldn't even try, which I think was John's problem with Magic Girl. Like John would have been much better off just making the zombie game instead of Magic Girl, because there's no reason to do a bunch of R&D to make 16 copies of something.
Yeah.
One other thing with Mystery Science Theater is a license. Again, I really like it as a show, but Chuck was like talking to people, but I wasn't sure if it would fit pinball, like how the rules work. And that's
That's what I thought. That would be difficult because you have so many different movies that are very different from each other, and I mean the jokes are, like you mentioned earlier, have to be in context, and so that's where it's tough.
yeah. I think the idea was there would be like, well, shit. I remember like 6 years ago, like hanging out with Tanya Kleiss and Jerry Ellsworth talking. Like, wouldn't it be cool to make a Mystery Science Theater pinball machine? I mean, the idea's been on forever.
Wasn't Jerry Ellsworth making a pinball too at one point?
Yeah, she was making one
She
called
was,
Seen on TV.
Yeah, that never materialized, apparently. I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, because then she went to Valve and now she's doing the Castellar, which has been pretty successful. But yes, you're right. She still hasn't finished it, so she better finish it. And Tanya's at Stern, so everyone, a lot of people ended up with pinball anyway. But yeah, the idea was like the robots could trash talk your gameplay and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of factors where we kind of got cold feet on it, and I think Chuck may have offered them a bit too much on a per game fee, and I think that was just due to our inexperience.
Oh, gotcha.
Because
Well,
remember,
that's
we have to pay more per game because we make fewer games. Like you basically have
Right.
to pay usually between $50,000 to $100,000 to do anything. So if you're Stern, that amortizes down to like $50 a game. But if you're
Mhm.
us, or like even if like the Predator guys had somehow Hail Mary passed and got the Predator license,
Yeah.
they would have had to divide, like, I don't know, let's say $75,000 into 250 games, and that you'd be like $250 a game, and then that just wouldn't have worked with their bomb. So I guess my point is, like, yeah, the fewer games you have to pay a certain amount no matter what. So like if you're like a licensor, you're like that person's like, oh, I want $100,000, and as the manufacturer, it's your responsibility. Like, okay, can you divide that cost up into the games and still have it be a small enough item on your bomb? And for a small
Right.
distributor like us, or even like Big Lebowski, who allegedly Dutch Pinball way overpaid for that, from what I've heard. You have to divide that into your quantities, and if you start talking like $400 a game or something, like that's ridiculous, and it's just not going to work.
Right.
Yeah. So I hope Chuck doesn't try to murder me for saying that. But I guess if Trey said it,
You can blame
public,
me. I brought it.
yeah. Well, that's too bad. That's too bad. That's because in some way it's like our decision not to do something, was disappointing to someone I really enjoyed watching in the '90s. So, oh well, maybe
Yeah.
someday.
I would have been a
no,
buyer
never-
for that one.
Never say never.
I'd personally love to
probably
do. If I could do any license, I would probably want to do Futurama. I think it would really
Yeah, that would be.
it would work with pinball. Matt Groening's a fan of pinball. The modes would be the deliveries and the planets. It would really be straightforward. I think a lot of people, they're like, well, Iron Maiden's a perfect example. I like Iron Maiden. I like pinball. They should make an Iron Maiden pinball. That's the logic that people put into these
See,
games.
I don't get
The
that.
fans, at least. Well, they want Iron Maiden because Iron Maiden has iconic artwork, and people like artwork on pins. That's all they care about. They want them to look good in their homes. But it's like, okay, name. You see, you can go on Pinside, type in Iron Maiden. It's actually the #1 phrase on Pinside. Nothing exceeds Iron Maiden. But there, in not a single one of those posts will someone actually type up, okay, here's an idea for a mode in Iron Maiden. Here's an idea for rules. None of that. Like, people don't put any thought into it. They just think Iron Maiden pinball.
We could have a Fear of the
That's
Dark
what
mode, right?
3D painting.
It'd be a Fear of the Dark mode, right? And then there'd be oh God, I don't even know any other Remain songs. Run to the Hills, right?
Oh yeah. What's that song from the movie Heavy Metal? 5 minutes to midnight. Oh yeah.
That's not Iron. That's not Iron Maiden.
I thought it was.
No, it's not. Oh,
5 minutes to midnight is not Iron Maiden.
I don't think so.
Heavy Metal would be a cool pinball machine.
Yeah, that would be better. I mean, but they did have to license all the different types of music, though. It'd probably be nice.
Can you imagine like a Heavy Metal pinball machine with Alex Horley art? That would be badass.
Yeah. Huh?
Oh, I guess I didn't really answer your question about future pinballs. I'm actually, at the moment, I'm not working on anything. I'm just helping with Rob Zombie to get that out the door. But
You're not working on the pizza game?
no, actually, I have nothing to do with that. I've seen it. I've seen the cabinet. The cabinet's actually really nice. Like some NASA engineer won the contest, and it's not to stereotype, but it's actually really good looking for something designed by an engineer, because usually, engineers and artists aren't the same. But I was quite impressed with how it looked. Scott from Wooly drew all that.
Oh, okay.
Wooly Scott. All right. Any other questions before we go?
Adam?
Good question. I guess what are you looking forward to from other factories that are doing pinballs? Because you have Stern with Ghostbusters, you have Highway Pinball, Jersey Jack. Anything from those guys that you're looking forward to?
Well, I'm seriously thinking about maybe trying to dump my Attack from Mars before the value crashes anymore, and maybe get a Ghostbusters. I think that looks like an incredibly strong game. I hope I get to play it in
Right.
Texas next week. Um, as far as other stuff, not really. I do think that Andrew Highway's pinball system actually has a lot of really smart ideas in it, and I kind of
Hmm.
wish he got more credit or interest. And again, Full Throttle is an unlicensed game equals people don't care. It's quite simple. Alien will have a lot more interest obviously because it's a license. People
Yeah.
online are like, we want unlicensed games, which actually means they want licensed games. That was definitely something I figured out, or we figured out
There's
early on. Is basically people want the opposite of whatever they say they want.
in Andrew's
Right.
games, there's no rollover switches, is there? I didn't see it.
No, it's Hall effect sensors. No, not I'm sorry, inductive sensors.
Yeah, see, I got in trouble for saying that.
Yeah, isn't it similar to what Atari used way back in the day for their few pins? Something along those lines. I can't remember.
I don't think
It's
so.
it's closest to how Theater of Magic detects the ball going in the outline and catches it.
Hmm.
Basically, the switch creates a small magnetic field, and when a steel object passes over the field collapses
Right.
slightly, triggering the event. Actually, it's the same way if you're at a stoplight and the stoplight knows your car is there.
Hmm.
Same
Mhm.
thing. Or like how they know that you're at the drive-through, your car basically sucks up the magnetic field and causes a dip.
Yeah.
So basically, just think of it like a giant a giant stoplight detector.
It's in all the redemption games like Ice Claw machines and Barber Cuts have Hall
Right.
effect sensors
It's
for.
a good idea. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that Andrew's doing that I think is progressive for industry.
And it seems
And
like
also,
the ball's faster because there's no switches to roll. I swear to God, the switches must slow the ball down. It seems like that thing goes faster because of it.
That would make sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was looking at Hilton's the other day, and he was talking about that. I was like, yeah, he's like, look, there's less drag, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, that game is really fast. I think it's pretty fun, and it's the rules are pretty good. It tells you what to do. The lights make sense. There's a ton of crap in that game for $6,000. I honestly don't know how he sells it for that much, or that little, I should say. And I also think Jerry Stellenberg's P3 doesn't get enough credit.
Hmm.
If someone, again, it all comes down to licenses. That's all that matters. If someone were to make like a killer license for Jerry's game, like Original Tron, like a killer license with his system, I think people would just go nuts for it. But the games
Right.
he says he's got more games at TPF. I'm curious to see what those are. But the current stuff he has, like with the Lightspeed Racing or whatever it is, and then the Lexi Lightspeed, again, they're original themes, and they're also the themes are kind of a little confusing. So that it takes themes for people to get excited. So it's really going to take Alien for people to really take Andrew seriously. And I think Jerry should, look into a license as well.
Okay. Well, Ben, I'm going to try to get us out of here.
All right.
We all got schedules and stuff to do, so
Yeah, I got to get back to writing.
I appreciate you coming on and everything you do for the world of
Yes,
pinball.
thank you.
And hopefully we'll hear from you again.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. Well, that was great to have Ben on, and thank you, Sean, for being able to get him scheduled and on. So hopefully
No problem.
that went well for everybody out there listening. But I guess just to close this off, won't really be able to throw in much more to the podcast. It's just this week will be Amusement Expo in Las Vegas. So among titles we expect to see there, Ghostbusters Pinball is definitely going to be one of those. So be able to get my hands on that. I'll definitely shoot some video and share that online with any impressions if anybody's looking for that. Let's see what else is going to be there. Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. Luigi Mansion Arcade, possibly with an English translation. That would be nice.
We can only hope.
Yeah, because I got to play it at IAPA, but it was all in Japanese. And while it was playable, probably would have been better if I knew exactly what was going on. And let's see, MotoGP would definitely be there. Possibly Killer Queen Arcade. I'm not 100% sure if that will be there, the new Rothrills version, because I asked them about that, and they said it would be at the Nightclub and Bar Show, which happened last week. But they didn't confirm if it would be at Amusement Expo or not. So kind of hoping it is, since I keep hearing about that. And
that's a good game.
Popular store. And it's supposed to be even better now with all those improvements and whatnot.
Yeah, they put stickers on the side, looks like.
Well, they did more.
I know, I'm just giving them shit. Continue.
Then, let's see. Possibility Q*bert would be there. I mean, we've seen pictures of the Q*bert Redemption game previously out on tests, but just waiting to see when that'll be at a trade show. And then, of course, Cruisin', which I still assume might be Rothrills if they are continuing with that. And also Bandai Namco might have Wing and Midnight Maximum Tune 5. I know there's a lot of Maximum Tune fans out there that have been wanting Namco to bring that series back over to the States, since they kind of didn't really do that with 4. And yeah, that's it for what I can guess. Anything you want me to keep an eye out for, Sean?
Well, definitely check out the Ghostbusters, and definitely let me know if there's a Cruisin' game, because damn, I'll be buying that.
Right. Seems like, I mean, in a way that is a license because it's so well known at this point. And even though Supercars and Fast and Furious games were pretty much Cruisin', I think that name attached to that, again, will do really, really well.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Get a chance to play Killer Queen while you're there, and I'm going to let's get us sent off here. And
Sure thing. So go ahead.
You can catch us at allcastlegames.com on the internet, and on Facebook it's All Castle Games as well. And Adam, you can go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you all for listening once again, and you know where to find us at arcadeheroes.com. Got all of our social media channels from YouTube to Facebook, Twitter, Google+. I even created a new MeWe group. That's a newer social media one that nobody's on. And, of course, TeePublic for our T-shirts and anything else. Stay tuned. We'll have another podcast your way probably early April, maybe, hopefully.
Hopefully some after the show news, I hope, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. There's always a dearth after the show. But we'll see what we can do. But thank you for listening, and we'll catch you later.
Thanks a lot.